Hey, welcome to episode of Chad's Beer Reviews, doing yet another beer that I got in my last table or crate. Another one from Threes Brewing out of Brooklyn. Dare to Know Strata IPA. They're saying fresh pineapple, Mai Tai, cantaloupe. I guess that's the flavors. 6.9 ABV. You know, I never noticed this before. It says it was brewed in Framingham, Massachusetts. So I wonder if that's Jack's Abbey. Must be a contract brew. This was canned just about exactly 4 months ago, January 14th. So we need to hurry up and drink here. All right, so I poured it into the IPA glass. Not surprisingly, typical hazy, just kind of a, apricot orange. Very hazy, obviously. Pours to a big, full handful of white, fluffy foam, and it actually is sticking around. That's a good sign. I hate when hazies pour like this much foam and it just fizzles away before you even start the show. Yeah, I get the cantaloupe. Definitely. Very melony. Just fresh fruit scent, like you're in the produce section or the fruit section of the produce section. Yeah, I call it cantaloupe, pineapple, guava, mango, something like that. I don't think I would call it citrusy. It's just, stone fruit, tropical fruit. Very, very typical hazy smelling beer. Let's see if it's a typical hazy taste. Cheers. Yeah, this has I'd say it's like, 80 to 90% the familiar hazy taste, but there is like there's some kind of flavor in there that's a little original. I think it's kind of like that, that cantaloupe kind of thing that they mentioned here. Actually, I checked their website too, and so it's actually made with German Pilsner malt and then like German wheat and American wheat flakes or something like that, which would explain why it's so, opaque and fluffy and so much foam. Yeah, this one actually has like a little bit more bitterness than your average hazy. I mean, it's only 6.9, so it's not super strong, at least not by, IPA standards. I should have checked Untapped. Actually, I always tried to like not check Untapped because I feel like that's kind of like a spoiler, but sometimes I would like to know what the IBUs are before I get into a beer. And, I'm sure that I've had other hazies with Strata hops in them. Like these, like the New Zealand hops are like the must-have hops, Rawaka, especially. And then Pacific Northwest, the Strata, actually I just saw on the website, said it was developed at the University of Oregon. And so it's a Pacific Northwest hop, so it's an American hop. I don't know if I would go as far as to call this one juicy. I mean, it's definitely fruit flavored. It's not quite as like succulent as the aroma led me to believe. Maybe it's just because like it seems like a little bit more bitter than your average hazy. So like I'm getting like a fruity flavor up front, and then like immediately kind of turns on a dime to. And I call it like it's kind of a faint grassiness. Like I would not call this one dank, or like at least like not like overtly dank. Like some of them are just like straight up like weed in beer form, or like somebody just cut the grass, and it's so like you can actually almost kind of like taste it in the air. This one is I don't know. I don't want to call it West Coast because like I'm really not getting the citrus things that you would get like on a Stone or Ballast Point or something like that, but it's just a little bit different than your average hazy. If I pay like really close attention, I actually kind of get like a tiny little bit of pine in there. But yeah, this one's good. I don't know. I feel like I'm shortchanging you guys because like I've had so many hazies and like there isn't a whole lot to say that I haven't already said. Because these beers are like 99% the same 99% of the time. So, guess what? This is a tavour beer, so scan that QR code, download the app to get you $10 off. This was only $6.99 on there, which I think is a pretty good deal. It's pretty normal for a hazy. Although it's interesting because I did not know that they were contract brewed, or at least this particular beer is. I'd have to go back and look to see the other ones were. I'll have to ask Brett, who lives in Brooklyn. Maybe he knows. All right, so I'm rambling. So to wrap this up, Dare to Know Strata IPA by Threes Brewing. I like it. It's slightly different than most hazies that I've had, but not like so unique that it's like super memorable. Like I'm not gonna remember this beer, a few weeks from now. But I'm glad I had it. So solid 8 out of 10 for Dare to Know from Threes Brewing. I actually have a wild ale coming from them in my next tavour crate, so that one should be really interesting. All right, so if you watch all the way in, you already know you're awesome. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys for Teetotaler Thursday. Cheers.
Somebody brewed it, Chad just reviewed it. Thanks for watching Chad's Beer Review.
Trust me, the next episode will be a lot better.